Well, hello there. It's good to see you again. And according to my screen here, I am on live. And once again, fashionably late. But unfortunately, because of my work, I work from home. I make a lot of phone calls on behalf of the wonderful Dr. Whimsy Anderson. Sometimes it spills over. And I have to be a little late out of necessity because my work comes first. But I'm happy to be here. I always love doing this. I love connecting with everyone. And let's see if some people come on and join me soon. Um, I have some wonderful, loyal people, and I know you'll be here soon enough. So I'll just chat for a little bit. Hi, Andy. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. And Andy, thank you for joining with Anastasia on her shows because I know it means a lot to her, just as it means a lot to me. She's looking to build her subscribership right now and her viewers, and I'm always happy to do anything I can to help. And Andy, what you do does help a lot. Oh, Jim, my new friends are joining here today. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to have you here, Jim. Is that did you say Jim or yeah, Jim, my new friends are joining here today. Okay, well, thank you. And of course, hey Jim, it's very nice to meet you. But well, no wait, I think you were on Anastasia's show last week. I believe so. I think I have, in a way, met you already. And Ward, yes, we're here. Thank you, Ward. Thank you for making it back. Thank you. I know that Joyce won't be here today because she has a prior commitment, but I have other friends here, and that's always great. I'm trying to just babble a little bit here to give some people a chance to log on. It's summer. It's muggy. It's hot. My air conditioner only does but so much. How are you guys doing where you are right now? Oh, and Ward, don't worry about the mix-up last week. It's more than understandable. Please, I'm just thankful you're here. Ward, Chuck, I met Jim and Sydney on the Stooge Talk streams. Really? That's great. I didn't know there were Stooge Talk streams, but I'm glad there are. I guess most great stars have their following, and it's great that we keep their memory alive and keep passing the ball to future generations. That's the way I feel very much about Lucille Ball and I Love Lucy. Now, dear Lucy doesn't need quite as much help because she has such a built-in following, but it is important to it's like having a precious heirloom, family heirloom, and you pass it from one generation to the next, and that's what keeps it alive. Ward, I'm fine. If no one mentioned it last week, yes, June Lockhart had her 100th birthday last week. I met her once. I'm trying to remember when this was. I think it was back in the late 90s. I was working in Brentwood at the time. Brentwood, California, part of Los Angeles. Brentwood is a very, shall we say, rich upper crust area. It's kind of like Beverly Hills, Holmby Hills, very upper crust. But anyway, June Lockhart used to come into the health store where I was working, doing nutrition and naturopathic medicine, and just as lovely as you would ever expect her to be. When I say lovely, I don't mean just physically lovely. I mean lovely soul, very warm, very gracious, very sweet. And, I've said this before, that when I have dealt with celebrities, for the most part, I had to learn really decades ago when I first came to LA, celebrity etiquette, to not go overboard, to just stay very restrained and treat the person like a regular person and kind of semi-pretend like I don't know who they are, even though I know who they are and they know that I know who they are. But June Lockhart was special because she was one of those people I grew up with. We used to watch her on Lassie, used to watch her on Lost in Space. And I'm sure some of you remember her when she was on Petticoat Junction. This is just water here. I swear. Even though it's a glass I picked, but she used to be on Petticoat Junction. She replaced B. Benaderet in the final year of the show. B. Benaderet, of course, was the wonderful, wonderful character actress, and she sadly died of lung cancer. But before, I think sometime during the 5th season of the show, and they had to write her out and they had to work around it. And Paul Henning was seeking a mature actress who could not take over the role of Kate Bradley. Nobody could do that, but a new character that would act as sort of a mother figure on the show, semi-matriarch, but at the same time not take the place of B. Benaderet. So June Lockhart was brought on to play the new town doctor. And of course, back in 1970, that was a big deal. The lady doctor, and of course, Uncle Joe and others rebelled against it until they were won over by the warm, wonderful June Lockhart. I forget what her character's name. I think it was Dr. Janet Craig or something. And Paul Henning held her in very high regard. Paul Henning was he was the producer and head writer and creator of Petticoat Junction, just as he did the same duties for the Beverly Hillbillies and Green Acres. And he even linked the 3 shows together through Hooterville, where the Clampetts would come to Hooterville. Sometimes Granny had a crush on Sam Drucker. Here's Sasha. She says hello. I never know what Sasha's going to do. Yes. Do you want to be on, or do you want me to put you down? Well, right now she wants to be hugged, but I think she's going to want to be put down in a moment, but I will give her the moment and share her with you. No, you want down. Okay. What was I saying here? Paul Henning. I was talking about Paul Henning and how he was the creator of the shows, and he managed to overlap the series in the latter seasons with people guesting on each other's shows. Kind of a cute thing. And back in the 90s, I was, I'll read the comments in just a second here, but back in the 90s, I was in the home of Paul and Ruth Henning in Toluca Lake. My dear friend Bart Andrews, the writer, he was also a literary agent, and I'm looking to see what my cat's getting into over here. Sasha. Okay. I don't want to get up during the show, but my cat is getting into some mischief over here. I was in their home through Bart Andrews, who was a literary agent, and Ruth Henning was writing what was an autobiography, but it was for Paul. She was, sorry, I had to decline that. She was writing the book, and she was shopping it around, and Bart expressed interest in representing her. And he said to me, "Hey, you want to come over to Paul Henning's home with me?" And I said, "Sure, I think that would be a lot of fun." That'd be a lot of fun to meet the guy who made the Beverly Hillbillies and all. And we met with Ruth first. She was just a delightful lady. We had coffee with her first, and she invited us over. And sorry, I don't know why someone's trying to call me. I tell people not to call me, and they do it anyway. I apologize for that. So we went over to the home, and it was like something out of a movie script. Walk in, and there's Paul Henning sitting in his den with the big television, and he was watching the Beverly Hillbillies. I swear to God, that's what happened. He was sitting there watching the Beverly Hillbillies, and he stood up and introduced himself. And sorry, this is really annoying. Boy, someone's keep calling me. He stood up, introduced himself, and then he pointed to the TV screen. And he goes, "Listen, Buddy Ebsen had a cold that day. Listen to his voice." And he was working, even though he was very congested. So it's kind of fun to have that pointed out. But Paul Henning's house was just filled with memorabilia. And one of the reasons I bring this up is because he had a painting of June Lockhart as her character on the show. I don't know if it was used on the series or what, but he had a painting of her framed. He obviously was very fond of her. But he also had all props from all 3 series, and to me, what was the most exciting thing, if you remember Petticoat Junction, there was the train, the cannonball. And of course, they used a real train for actual shots, but they also had a scale model train that they would use for shots as well. He had the cannonball train, and he had train track running all throughout the house along the wall. And he had a little electronic thing, a little button he could push, and he could make the train go around, and the whistle would blow and everything. So that was really adorable. And it was also fun just to hear firsthand stories about the shows. And I was really interested because Paul Henning used to be the writer for George Burns and Gracie Allen for radio and television. And his wife, Ruth, was telling me that she and Gracie were very close friends. So, of course, I was immediately interested. Tell me about Gracie. What was she like? What was she like? And Ruth just confirmed to me. She said Gracie was a very intelligent woman in real life. She had a high IQ. She was just a good actress who could play scatterbrained. And I also wanted to know, was that her real voice? Was that how she really talked? And Ruth said, yes, that was her real voice. And I have to think of some more stories here, but I better go back here and look at comments here because I'm getting way behind. It's hard to read these and talk at the same time. Jim, thank you for your kind words about myself and Anastasia. Thank you. And Jim just said Sydney is a sweetheart. And then let's see, we mentioned about June Lockhart and her 100th birthday. And we did mention last week the lady who played Donna on Sanford and Son passing away, because I mentioned that she also played the character of Verdi on The Waltons. And I saw several social media postings from various cast members on the show paying little tributes to her, talking about how sweet she was in real life, how everybody just loved her personally, but also there were lots of kind words about what a fine actress she was, what the presence she brought to the show with the character of Verdi. And it also gave them the opportunities to tackle a few issues around racial divide, what it was like to be African American in a Southern community in that time during the 1930s and 40s. And they handled it quite well and handled it quite tastefully. And a lot of that had to do with the fact they had this wonderful actress who was a regular on the show and contributed. And let's see, Jim, Donna was played by the great and lovely Lynn Hamilton. Yes. And you just mentioned what I said about her being on the Waltons. Andy, what link are you talking about that you can't get to fit on here? I'm so sorry. Maybe you can tell me and maybe I can help you. I don't know. Oh my gosh, June Lockhart played one of Tiny Tim's sisters in A Christmas Carol. Oh, that's sweet. June Lockhart had a long career. I know that she was in... She can't decide what she wants to do. June Lockhart was in Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944 with Judy Garland. And I'm trying to think of some earlier ventures she did. But anyway, I think it's wonderful that she's still very much with us. I have a friend in San Francisco who knows her quite well. And he's always said good things about June. Yes, that was true about B. Benaderet, Kate Bradley. And I, of course, forgot to mention about her being the voice of Betty Rubble. That distinctive laugh that Rosie O'Donnell imitated B. Benadet's laugh when she was in the Flintstone movie. Wow, my God, that movie was like 30 years ago, but she was perfect for the role. And another thing about B. Benaderet, she was Lucille Ball's original choice to play Ethel Mertz. And the reason was because before I Love Lucy, Lucille Ball was doing a radio show called My Favorite Husband. And Jess Oppenheimer, the producer and head writer, and Bob Carroll Jr. and Madeline Davis Pugh, they all worked on that radio show together. And when CBS wanted to turn it into a TV series, it morphed into I Love Lucy, because Lucy, of course, wanted Desi Arnaz, her real life husband, to play her husband on the show, and they had to find a way to retool it to make it believable that the all-American redhead was married to a Cuban band leader. And of course, it worked. It worked very well. But anyway, Bea Benaderet played her sidekick on My Favorite Husband. And of course, Gail Gordon played her husband. And Lucy wanted Gail Gordon to be Fred Mertz, and she wanted Bea to be Ethel. And they both had prior commitments. Gail Gordon was committed to doing Our Miss Brooks with Eve Arden, and Bea Benaderet was committed to do the television show with George Burns and Gracie Allen. So we know how that worked out. And I think for the highest good of everyone, the perfect actors got the perfect roles. Yeah, she was a great, great actress and character actress. And it was Paul Henning, when he was creating Petticoat Junction, he had worked with Bea all these years, worked with her on Burns and Allen. And then the Beverly Hillbillies, as you recall, Bea Benaderet played cousin Pearl Bodine. And Paul Henning, after the Beverly Hillbillies became a hit, it became the #1 show for a while. It was a smash hit show for CBS. And CBS went to Paul and said, we want you to create another show. We want more magic. And Paul had for years wanted to make Bea Benaderet a leading lady, a star. And he approached her and he said, because she'd always been the sporting actress, the character actress. And he approached her and said, Bea, your time has come. You are going to be a star. You're going to have your own show now, and I'm going to create it for you. That's how that all came about. Let's see here. Through some more comments. I had to scroll back here, so please pardon me. Would you think Miss Sasha would like the Petticoat Junction dog? I don't know, Sasha. Would you have liked the Petticoat Junction dog? She's looking at me like, as you can see her reaction. I don't know. Let's see here. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your compliments. And we got Kathy here. Thank you, Kathy. It's good to have you here. Thank you. And Wendy, thank you. Thank you for joining. I just appreciate you all for your loyalty and faithfully coming here. And let's see, Andy, I forgot John Wayne had a cameo in the Beverly Hillbillies. When I think of guest appearances, I always think of Gloria Swanson. Pardon me. Gloria Swanson guest starred on the Beverly Hillbillies once, and she played herself. And the Clampetts thought that Gloria Swanson was down on her luck, and they decided to help her make another silent movie, something that Norma Desmond never got to have, but Gloria Swanson got to have a silent movie with the Beverly Hillbillies. I just saw not too long ago Max Baer Jr. played Jethro. I saw a picture of him. He's 87 now. 87 and still thriving and doing well. I think he lives in Lake Tahoe, and he is considered the only surviving cast member of the show. Years ago, I'm trying to remember how long it was, but I did meet Donna Douglas, and she was a sweetheart. And it was interesting. She still wore that hairdo with the pigtails and the curls. That was her trademark look. She never changed it. And in real life, she didn't speak with a Southern accent, which was a little surprising, to see Ellie Mae speaking, more just non-regional, Midwestern, whatever you want to call it. I should have asked her about her critters and asked her to do that whistle she did. I think one of the funniest things I ever saw her do was on the Beverly Hillbillies. It was those early episodes, that first season, I think were the best they ever did. When the Clampetts were the fish out of water, or they were trying to transition to living mansion life in Beverly Hills. And Jane Hathaway bought Ellie Mae a new wardrobe, including a ball gown. Only Ellie Mae thought that meant a gown to wear while she played baseball. So she came in with her beautiful ball gown, all covered in dirt and all ripped up, and she had her baseball cap on and everything. She goes, "Oh, I just love this new ball gown you bought me." And let's see what else is on here. What happened to Sasha's blanket for her to lay on in the background? And I don't. Well, I guess you mean this. I just took it down because I didn't want it on camera. Yeah, Ellie Mae had a lot of critters, and there was a trainer on that show. I forget his name, but he was very well known for training animals for movies and television. And the Beverly Hillbillies was one of the biggest jobs he ever had, because it seemed like Ellie Mae practically had a zoo at the Clampett Mansion. I remember there was one where there was a kangaroo, and I think there was an ostrich, and oh gosh, I forget how many critters she had. Let's see. What are some other comments here? Let's see. I was looking at some other comments here. I think I covered most of the territory here. Forgive me if I missed something important. It's a little difficult here. I've always said this. I wish there was a way YouTube had it so there could be like a little teleprompter thing where I could look into the camera, but I could read the comments right in front of me, where you wouldn't see them, but I would see them, and I could just read and talk directly to you and make eye contact. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know if it's possible. But let's see. What do you have plans for the 4th of July? I am going to the Hollywood Bowl on July 2nd. Their big Hollywood Bowl fireworks show is a 3-night affair. They do July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And it's always fun to go on the 4th, but many times that's a very hard ticket to get. Those tickets sell out very fast. And I was amazed that even the July 2nd and 3rd were almost sold out. In the Hollywood Bowl seats over 18,000 people, but I did get tickets for July 2nd. And I'm going to see Earth, Wind, and Fire. Really looking forward to that, because I've been a fan of them forever, since I was in college. So I think that's going to be a fun evening. And what I love about the Hollywood Bowl, it's just like one big gigantic summer outdoor party. You're allowed to bring a picnic basket. You can bring wine with you. Just sit out under the stars and listen to great music. And it's one of my favorite things in all of Los Angeles. I've been going to the Hollywood Bowl more than 30 years. And my goodness, when I think, it's hard for me to even remember how many people I've seen perform there. I've seen Barbra Streisand there, Diana Ross, the wonderful Audra McDonald, the Beach Boys, Hall & Oates. I'm just going to see Earth, Wind, and Fire. And, something I'm really looking forward to, and this was a hard ticket to get, but I have it for August. I'm going to see Cynthia Erivo. Cynthia Erivo is going to be starring in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar, the great Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. I've seen the show at least twice. I might have seen it 3 times, so I'm not really eager to see it again, but I very much want to see Cynthia Erivo perform live. And it's going to be likely controversial. I haven't heard controversy yet, but I think there will be. Cynthia is going to play Jesus Christ. And I don't know if the role has ever been played by a woman before. It might have. I'd have to research that. But it's also going to be, frankly, controversial. Miss Erivo's sexuality, I can just imagine there's going to be uproar from fundamentalist Christians, but we're going to see what happens. I hope there isn't, because I think she's going to put so much heart and so much of her soul into that role and give it everything she's got. And with that beautiful voice, I can't wait to be present in the audience for it. So I do have my ticket for August. And let's see here. Oh, Extreme Brands, Earth, Wind, and Fire was your very first concert. I've never seen them in concert. You know, my very first concert was Billy Joel. Billy Joel, my freshman year of college. And I even remember it was April Fool's Day because he played a joke on the audience. He came out and did one song and said, "Good night, everybody," and left the stage for about 5 minutes, leaving everybody sitting there wondering what's going on. But of course, he came back. Let's see. Yeah, Andy, there was a very good version made for television. I think it was a live broadcast. John Legend starred in Jesus Christ Superstar. And Alice Cooper was in it. And you know, Alice Cooper, speaking of him, Mae West's very last movie, made in 1978. She was 86 years old. It was called Sextet. And Alice Cooper had a wonderful scene in that where he sang with Mae, and they were adorable together. Just adorable. Yes, Ward. Yeah, I hope Mr. Joel recovers soon. He's quite ill right now. I forget what the illness is. It's some sort of brain disorder, but he's being treated. And on the news, they were guardedly optimistic. They said that his doctors feel he will make a recovery, that what he has is treatable. But of course, he just can't be on the concert stage right now at this time. Andy, your first concert was Victor Borga. Oh, yes, the nosebleed section. I know the nosebleed section quite well, especially at the Hollywood Bowl. Those seats go way, way up into the back, and more often than not, that's where I'm sitting because it is more affordable. Now, a very dear friend of mine once took me. It was a night where it was not a major star performing. I think it was, as I recall correctly, it was just a concert with the LA Philharmonic. But I got to sit in those front orchestra seats thanks to my friend. I got to experience that at least once. And I have on occasion had good seats, more in the middle. I was at the concert with Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga in 2015. One of the greatest concerts I've ever been to in my entire life. I was just talking about it with my dear friend Pam today, if Pomona remembers. Both of them just in top form, top of their game. Tony Bennett was, I think, 88, 89 years old at the time. And I'm a big fan of his. I have albums of his going back to the 1950s and 60s. And as I sat there listening to him, I actually closed my eyes for a moment and just listened. And I thought, at his age, he was singing better. How many singers can do that, can sing better in their late 80s and are almost 90 years old? He was belting out these big, high notes. Like, I said, how is he doing that? So it wasn't a case of a legendary performer just kind of riding on the coattails of their legend. This was a man who was still performing and very much relevant. And then, of course, Gaga, the wonderful, wonderful Lady Gaga, very much at that time a star who was really rising. I don't think she'd even made her first movie yet. The Star is Born, which she got an Oscar nomination for. But she was really getting noticed as a great, great singer. She had just done the Oscar telecast where she did this exquisite melody from The Sound of Music. And it was gorgeous. I highly recommend you watching that on YouTube if you've never seen it. Lady Gaga said that she trained daily with a vocal coach for 6 months just to be ready for that performance, because she sang in this beautiful, beautiful soprano. And Julie Andrews came out on stage, and Julie was crying. Julie hugged her tightly and was wiping away tears. She was so moved by Gaga's performance. And I think when I saw them at the Hollywood Bowl, it was only a few weeks after that. And Gaga had just, she was, I love it best when she sings the old standards, like when the things she did with Tony Bennett on their 2 albums and their concerts. And they were just, I know it's cliche to say this, but they were magical together. They just, they had such chemistry, and you could see how much they loved and respected each other. It came off, it was, they were like 2 cherished family members together. I loved how Gaga, Tony Bennett gave Lady Gaga class and gravitas, and Gaga in turn made Tony Bennett young and hip and relevant. And it was just so exciting to watch those dynamics. I think that's one of the greatest concerts I ever saw in my life, and that was at the Hollywood Bowl, to get back to the point I was talking about. And I'm thinking also about the time I saw Barbra Streisand there. Now, I have seen her before many times. This was her the fourth time I had seen Streisand, but it was the first time it had been on my home turf, because 2 times before it had been in Anaheim, where Disneyland is. And then once I saw her, it's not called the Staples Center anymore, but that's what it was called at the time, in downtown Los Angeles. But it was really nice at the Bowl because that's much easier for me to get to. But what was interesting about that night at the Hollywood Bowl was it was in November. And I had always gone to the Hollywood Bowl always on hot summer nights. I always associated the Hollywood Bowl with summertime. So for some reason, I was not thinking when I went to a concert in November, and it was a freezing, cold, windy night. And I just had this leather jacket on. I should have had a scarf. I should have had earmuffs. I should have had gloves. I wasn't prepared. And I remember everybody in the audience was literally huddling close together just for body heat. We were shivering. It was so cold. And Barbara had heat lamps on stage, and she had to put on a coat. She said, "I'm sorry you can't see my dress. It's so beautiful, but it's too cold." So she had a heavy coat on. And she even gave an interview years later where she talked back on it, because she was recalling how her son Jason performed with her at the Hollywood Bowl and did some solos. And she said that night was so cold. And I remember Barbara was worried about us. She kept saying between songs, "Are you guys okay out there? Are you warm enough? Are you okay?" So those are some of my Hollywood Bowl memories. And Barbra Streisand has a beautiful new album out. Just was released on June 27th. It's her first studio album in 7 years. And she's wonderful. It's not the powerhouse voice of decades ago, but what she has left of her voice, she works exquisitely and uses extremely well. And it's an album of duets. It's a sequel to Partners, which she did back in 2014. This is called The Secret of Life. And she's got duets with people like Paul McCartney, Sam Smith, Mariah Carey, Ariana Grande, James Taylor. But you know what my biggest surprise was? The duet she did with Bob Dylan. I never thought those 2 voices would work together. And Barbra Streisand herself said she never thought their voices would work together. She basically said that because Bob Dylan was a big Streisand fan, and he had been pursuing her since the early 70s to record a duet. I think there was one account where he sent her flowers and he sent her several notes, and he was wonderful. And he's a very shy man. I talked to someone who knows him, said he's not aloof. He's just very painfully shy. But he approached Barbara, and Barbara just said, I don't see this. I just don't, what could we sing together? How would this work? But It was a number of years later, she approached Bob Dylan through his people. She never met him, but she sent a note and said, Bob, I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now. Would you record with me? And Barbara was telling in an interview how they recorded the duet. She did not meet him until he came to the studio. You know, she records at her home. She has a home studio. That was her very first meeting with Bob Dylan. And she said it was all the more remarkable because they're the same age. They both were from Brooklyn. They both, around the age of 19, were performing in nightclubs in Greenwich Village at the same time, but yet they somehow never crossed paths. And both of them, of course, went on to become legends. You know, Bob Dylan even became a Nobel laureate, you know, for his song lyrics, for the writing of his song lyrics. And she said he was so shy. He insisted that there be nobody present other than the technical people had to be there for the recording. Barbara said that her husband, Jim Brolin, had always attended all of her recording sessions, and he wasn't even allowed to be there. But they met, and Barbara was told, okay, you can't direct him. He doesn't like to be told what to do. So she was like, is this going to work? You know, but she was just preparing for it. And he came, and she said he couldn't have been lovelier. He was completely receptive to her suggestions, to her direction. And she said he stood on his feet. You know, this is an 83-year-old man. He stood on his feet for 3 hours for the time it took to record the song. And I listened to the album for the first time last night. I got to say, that's my favorite track on the whole album. Bob Dylan. I never liked his voice. But he actually sings nicely. He sings nicely. And it's was it the song the very thought of you, the Ray Noble song? I'm trying to make sure I got that correct here. I'm gonna pull it up. As you can see, we're in the era of downloads now. I have it downloaded on my phone. But yes, the very thought of you. It's beautiful, just beautiful to hear them together. And the album is lovely, lovely. If you're a Streisand fan, you won't be disappointed by this. I'm going to admit there have been a few albums in the last few years that have disappointed me. And plus, I love Barbara when she was in her prime, when that incomparable voice. Her voice has aged, but she still sounds very good. Her talent is still there. Talent never goes away. And those wonderful instincts that she had at the age of 19 are still very much present at the age of 83. And I say that also because what was meant to be Barbara's very first album was a live recording at the Bonsoir, the little nightclub in Greenwich Village where she was first performing. And the story goes, the sound quality just was not what it should have been. And also a lot of external noises, you know, like people talking in the background and even glasses clattering on the table and stuff like that. That was the recording technology of 1962. It just was not something they considered to be releasable. So Barbara ended up going into the studio to record her very first album called the Barbra Streisand album. And also the second part of her act was recorded later for the second Barbra Streisand album, so titled, just as she called the third one, the third Barbra Streisand album. And Barbara said she just wanted it to be very simple. When a person went into the record store and said, "Hey, you got the Barbra Streisand album?" Well, yes, I do. That was her thinking. But Barbara held on to all of the master tapes. Supposedly, she's got this vault at her home filled with recordings and film and videotape, and it's my understanding that she's working with some people now to make a part documentary about her life, where she's going to use a lot of this material that's never been seen or heard. But she had the master tapes for Live at the Bonsoir, and a couple of years ago it was finally released. And thankfully, because we now have our extraordinary digital technology, we can do miracles with old recordings like that. They remastered it. They were able to clean up all the external noises and stuff. They were able to fix the deficiencies, and it's miraculous. If you're a Streisand fan, this is Barbara at her absolute prime, her absolute peak, where, she was 19, 20 years old, and she was just this enthusiastic kid singing her heart out. But the sound remastering is so good. It sounds literally like you're at the Bonsoir. You're there. It's like you've gone back 60 years in time. It's like you've got her here in my living room, singing for me 3 feet away. I love that album. So it's a real companion piece to listen to her when she first started out, and then flash forward over 60 years later to listen to her at the age of 83, still singing beautifully. You can tell I'm a big fan of hers. I've been a fan of hers since I saw The Way We Were in a movie theater, and I was a kid. And then a few months later, I saw Funny Girl on television. And that's all it took. I've been a major, major fan ever since. I've seen her 4 times in concert. I always joke and say I've seen her 4.5 times. And my sister said, well, what do you mean 4.5 times? Well, 4 times singing in concert. And then one time I saw her just speaking. It was a tribute to her dear friends, Alan and Marilyn Bergman, which was at the Motion Picture Academy, the Sam Goldwyn Theater in Beverly Hills. And it wasn't even announced she was going to be there. But I knew she was going to be there. And the reason I knew was because Alan and Marilyn Bergman, not only her close professional partners, but her closest friends. She always said they were like her step-parents. So I thought there's no way she's not going to be there to pay tribute. They just don't want to announce it because they don't want the place jammed with crazed fans trying to get in. But I was there. And yes, Barbara made an appearance. She walked out on stage and spoke eloquently about her dear friends. And then they, because the Bergmans did the lyrics for the songs in Yentl, Barbara was sitting there in a director's chair on stage, and this big movie screen came down, and like a foot above her head was playing Yentl on a big movie screen. And now to me, that was almost surrealistic to be watching the movie and to have Barbara Streisand sitting underneath the screen. I paid $350 to see her the first time back in 1994, 13 rows center from the stage. I paid $5 to see her that night with the Bergmans. $5, but got to see her in person again. And then there was one time she came into my place of work. And I've told this story before. I was on my lunch break. You should have seen my face when I came back. Hey, Chuck, guess who you just missed? No! I couldn't believe it. But how many people can say they've had Barbara Streisand walk into their place of work? I can say that much anyway. And I keep putting the wish out that I'm going to meet her someday. I keep putting it out because I manifested Carol Burnett. I told the story of how it was my lifelong dream to meet her. So I'm putting that same energy out there for Barbara. And I've even thought, well, if I did meet her, it'd probably be for like a little less than a minute. It'd be just a quality minute. I know Barbara Streisand does not like small talk, superfluous conversation. So I thought, well, I better have a topic prepared. And I thought, I know what I'd talk with her about. Perfectionism. Perfectionism. Um, because as an artist, I consider myself a perfectionist. And sometimes I will go to extremes, just like she will go to extremes. And frankly, it can be annoying to people. Um, Barbara was giving an interview. She was doing, she oversees everything. So she was sitting with the sound mixer as they were going through all the tracks for one of her previous albums. And she said, okay, I want you to turn this knob down. I want you to turn it down 1/2 of a decibel. And the sound engineer said, Barbara, the human ear is not going to hear 1/2 of a decibel down. They're not going to hear that. And Barbara said, yes, they will. They will feel it. They will get it in their subconscious. They will feel it subtly. Trust me, it makes a difference. And I'm just like that when I'm doing my artwork, like little lines, a little bit of color here, little tiny, tiny little details that probably no one will notice, but I notice it. And I know that you feel it. And I thought, Barbara, you are a woman after my heart, because I am on the same page with you. I am just as much a pain in the ass about perfectionism and little details like that. And I know that would be my topic. So let's see if I ever get my wish to meet her. I mentioned on here, I have 3 people left I want to meet. I've met hundreds of celebrities. There are 3. Barbra Streisand is top of the list, Meryl Streep, and Julie Andrews. And the interesting thing is, I have seen all 3 women on stage. I've seen them. Julie Andrews, I saw her twice at the Hollywood Bowl. I've talked about that on here. And Meryl Streep, I was at a screening for Little Women back in 2019, just before the pandemic broke out. And she did a question and answer with the audience. And I got to sit pretty close. I was excited. Yeah, I'm breathing the same air in the room as Meryl Streep. So I've come that close, but I want to go further. And I've met Meryl Streep, one of Meryl Streep's daughters, met Mamie Gummer once. So I have encountered Meryl's DNA. I think, yeah. And now that I recall, one time I was in Beverly Hills. What restaurant was it? It was, the name will come to me. But anyway, they had a counter. They had tables, but they also had a counter to sit at where you could also eat. And about 3 seats down from me was Barbara's son, Jason Gould. And Jason has an amazing voice in his own right. I did not meet Jason. I didn't go interrupt him or anything, but I did sit 3 seats down from him. But he has a beautiful voice. And he performed at the Hollywood Bowl with his mother. They sang How Deep is the Ocean, and of course recorded that for her album Partners in 2014. There's a wonderful clip on YouTube. They just show the 2 of them singing together. But the night I was there at the bowl, Barbara turned the show over to him and let him sing 3 songs of his own with the orchestra. And it was so cute because Barbara was the proud Jewish mother, so proud of her son. Like, let me show off my son. Look how talented he is. And Barbara said, now, she pointed up to the tech people, said, I want you to turn the lights off on me. And I'm just going to take a little folding chair. And I'm going to sit here to the side. And I want you to pretend like I'm not here. And I thought, Barbra Streisand is telling the audience to pretend she's not here. But I thought, for her son, she was so proud of him. And he sang so beautifully. And anyone who's been to the Hollywood Bowl, you have to, as you're leaving, you have to go down this long hill to work your way back down to the cars and buses and everything. And everyone was talking about how good Jason was. He was like the surprise of the evening. And I'm almost surprised that he has not become a bigger star in his own right, because he's got like a male version of his mother's voice. And Barbara was even talking in a recent interview about how it's genetic. Her mother had a lovely operatic soprano, and her grandfather, her mother's father, also sang in opera. And Barbara just said it's in our family DNA. It's in our vocal cords. My her sister, her half sister Rosalind Kind has it. It's that my son Jason has it. So that's kind of sweet. I need to go back here and look at some comments. I'm so sorry. Let me go back and I've got to go way back here. Let's see what are some things people said here. Let's see. The John Letter. Oh yes, going back to what I was saying about Alice Cooper and Mae West and Extreme Blood said Alice Cooper is a sober sponsor for many people seeking sobriety. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I did not know that about Alice Cooper. I've had friends be sponsors for people, and I've told the story also. I'm not an alcoholic myself, but a very close friend of mine asked me if I would go to a meeting with him because it was his 15th year of sobriety, and that's considered a birthday. And it's a custom at meetings to have a good friend present a cake to you. And he said, would you present my cake to me? And of course, I was honored to do that. But I had never been to a meeting, an AA meeting, and I sat there just listening to everybody's stories. And I learned so much that night about the plight of people in recovery, how I heard people over and over saying similar things. It's you're never cured. You're constantly addressing this. You're constantly dealing with it. It was people saying, I've been sober over 25 years, and it gets harder every day. It doesn't get easier. It gets harder. And I was really touched by the bravery of these people. And I've always had far more empathy for anyone going through addiction recovery because of that amazing night. And it was such an honor and a privilege to be there. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because what you said about Alice Cooper. Yes, and Jim, I hope Mr. Joel recovers too. Yeah, I've always loved his work as well. He has a very, speaking of children stars, he has a very talented daughter, Alexis Joel. And her mother is Christy Brinkley, and Alexis inherited a lot of her father's musical talent. She sings, and she also plays numerous instruments, just like him. I think she has performed on stage with her father. Let's see here. I'm looking at some other comments here. Oh yeah, we didn't start the fire. Yeah, I remember that song came out in the 80s. I think history teachers in high schools were actually using that song for a while to teach 20th century history to their students. Oh yeah, rest in peace, Brian Wilson. I saw Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys at the Hollywood Bowl a number of years ago. It was a 4th of July show. They do fireworks there. And in the audience, someone brought a great big beach ball, and we were bouncing the ball back and forth throughout the audience. And it was so much fun. That's what I mean about the Hollywood Bowl. It's like a big summer party. And I love how they actually encourage things like that there. Let's see, Extreme Bond. Tony Bennett looked better after he turned gray. They went to see Mr. Bennett when he saw Mr. Rogers as Lady Elaine Fairchild's guest. No, I'm sorry to say I didn't see that. I hope that's on YouTube because I would like to see it. He sang a song and he drew a sketch of her during the interview. Oh, I bet that was sweet. My all-time favorite guest appearance, and it's very much on YouTube, is the time Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz, she was a guest on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And that guest appearance came out of an appearance she had done a few months earlier on Sesame Street, where she played the Wicked Witch. Not full makeup. She didn't have her prosthetics on, but they painted her green, and she had the witch's hat and cloak and everything. And she played the character full out. And supposedly, a lot of parents complained because she scared the little children. She terrorized the little children. And Margaret Hamilton always felt terrible about that. In real life, she was a gentle, sweet lady. Real life, she and Judy Garland had a close, nurturing relationship when they were making the movie, The Wizard of Oz, of course, And Margaret Hamilton was originally a kindergarten teacher before she became a film actress. So she loved children. It was something that always brought her heartache when she heard that children were afraid of her. And so whenever she would encounter children, I read a very sweet account once of a child who it was some dinner party or something, all grown ups. He was like the one child there at the table, and he was seated next to Margaret Hamilton, and Margaret saw that he was like trembling a little. He was afraid. And the person, of course, obviously an adult now, told the story, said, Margaret turns to him, sweetheart, there's nothing to be afraid of. And she said, this was just a character I played in a movie. It's not who I really am. And he said by the end of the evening, they were chatting, and she was just the loveliest person. And anyway, she wanted to do Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood because of the Sesame Street episode. And if anyone has ever seen it, and it plays all the time on social media and YouTube and so forth, she does a gentle deconstruction of the character where she appears as herself, this sweet little grandmother, and she's talking about her grandchildren and tells a little about how hard they worked on the movie. And Mr. Rogers has a suitcase with the costume in it. And he said, would you put the witch's costume on for us? And she said, oh, I'd love to. And she's talking as herself as they're putting on the pieces of the costume, like the skirt and the blouse and the cape and everything. And at one point she has to turn around and goes, Mr. Rogers has to zip her up. And Mr. Rogers goes, look, boys and girls, even witches have zippers. And Margaret Hamilton points out that the skirt had pockets in it. She goes, even witches need to have pockets. So it was just very sweet. They were playing up the fact this was just an actress putting on a costume, playing a character. And there was nothing to be afraid of. It's such a sweet, sweet moment. I recommend it. Yeah, Tony Bennett did hit his stride in the 70s. Well, actually, Tony Bennett really started to hit his stride in the 1980s. And it was his son. I forget his son's name, but his son became his manager. And his son said, Dad, I'm going to make you hip, and I'm going to get the young people to discover you. So he started booking Tony Bennett on things like MTV. MTV used to have this show called Unplugged, where performers would perform with acoustic instruments, without amplification and electric guitars, stuff like that. And anyway, Tony Bennett started to get a following with the young crowd. It was because of his son. And hence the teaming with Lady Gaga. And it was magic. And it brought renewed relevancy to Tony Bennett's career. He started winning a whole bunch more Emmys. Not Emmys. He actually did win a couple of Emmys for his specials. But I was going to say Grammys. He started to win a lot more Grammys. I think he even won, once or even twice. I'd have to look this up. Album of the year. And this was well into his latter years, like the 80s, the 90s. It was very exciting to see all that for him. And of course, he made it to 95, and we know about his Alzheimer's, but by some miracle, he was still able to perform. And I saw interviews with doctors on television and said the brain, they're still studying Alzheimer's. And they said the thing with Tony Bennett, performing was so deeply ingrained to him. It was so intrinsic to him that even in the depths of Alzheimer's, he still had all of his song lyrics. He still could sing all out. You know, that last special he did with Gaga on CBS is so amazing. But it was also beautiful because you could see Gaga made it her mission to support him and take care of him on stage. You could just tell she had worked out a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. She was ready. She was ready for whatever could happen, whatever could maybe go wrong on stage. She was ready to take care of him and support him. It was a lot like what she did for Liza Minnelli at the Oscars. You know, when Liza was in a wheelchair and, you know, her mind, you know, she was getting a little forgetful and she got lost on stage, and Lady Gaga stepped in and just, she made a point of preserving Liza's dignity. You know, and she made it very much about Liza. She made it look like Liza was in control, but you could see Gaga there taking care of her. And there was a moment that got picked up on the microphone. I don't think she knew the mic was on. And you heard Gaga just whisper in her ear, I got you. I got you. I'll take care of you. Don't worry about anything. It was something to that effect. It was lovely. And I could see her doing that for Tony Bennett. It was like, I've got you. I'm going to take care of you. Don't you worry about a thing. And Tony Bennett got through the show beautifully. And it was so sweet. It came to his last song, the last song he was ever going to perform. And of course, it was I Left My Heart in San Francisco. But I loved the way Gaga took his hand and she said, Tony, would you sing I Left My Heart in San Francisco? Nobody in the world sings it like you. Nobody. Oh my God. I'm sure that whole audience was crying. And Tony sang it beautifully. And then Gaga came and took his arm and said, Mr. Bennett, Tony, may I have the honor of escorting you off the stage? And that's how they walked off. It was beautiful. Let me see here. What are some other comments here? Yeah, it was sad about Brian Wilson, Jim, but he lived to be 82 and he stayed relevant for a long time. And he lived long enough to see his work really being appreciated. He got to live long enough to see that he had become a part of American culture. Andy, I heard they end the episode that Margaret Hamilton. Oh, yes, that's true about the Sesame Street episode. There are clips of it on YouTube right now, but I heard that it was pulled from the Sesame Street catalog. It was not available for many, many years. I always thought that was a shame because to me, that was history. Margaret Hamilton in 1976 recreating the Wicked Witch of the West. I mean, one of the most famous characters in the history of movies. Really, just iconic to see her still doing it. Now, she also, that same year, did a special. It was the Paul Lynde Halloween special. And she played the Wicked Witch of the West again. And they got, I'm trying to think of the actress who played Witchy Poo, Billy Hayes. Billy Hayes, I think that was her name, played the witch, Witchy Poo on HR Puffin Stuff. So it was the historic pairing of the Wicked Witch of the West and Witchy Poo with Paul Lynde thrown in. It's a very campy, kitschy special, and it's on. Sounds like I'm plugging YouTube here. It's on YouTube if you ever want to see it. What was that, Ward? Andy, that was Sesame Street, not Mr. Rogers, in which she actually worked step by step, put the witch costume on. Yeah, it was Mr. Rogers. She put the costume on, but Sesame Street is where she actually played the character full out. And of course, Oscar the Grouch was in love. Oscar the Grouch thought he had found his soulmate. And even the Wicked Witch was a little charmed by that. Pardon me. Some water. It's hot here today. Let's see. What was this? What are some other things here? Why does Ariana never look like she can open her eyes? You mean Ariana Grande? I don't know. I hadn't noticed that about her, other than maybe I know she wears a lot of eye makeup, those false eyelashes and stuff. Maybe that's part to do with it. I don't know. Yeah, Ward, Miss Streisand is able to do amazing things past 80. She still has her voice. She said in an interview when she was her autobiography, she said, "Oh, I will never do another movie. I might direct a movie, but I have no desire to be in a movie again." But then, recent interview, she was asked, you know, she played Mother. I'm going to pronounce this carefully. Fokker, Mother Fokker, in the two Meet the Fokker movies, and she was asked if she was going to be in the fourth one. And she said, no, if they want me, they're going to have to pay me a lot of money. And she elaborated and said, I got paid much less than the other actors because I'm a woman. She said they made it up to her. They gave her a little bit of a bonus check, but she said, I was paid less. And she said, out of principle, if they want me back, they're going to have to pay me what they're paying Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro and the others. And so I don't think she's going to be in the movie, but she brought that up. Let's see. What was this? Oh, yeah, you're talking about Bob Dylan. So Extreme Brands mentions I don't like his voice either. But, earlier in the show, I was mentioning the duet she does with Barbara. And Bob Dylan actually sings nicely. I mean, it's not a big voice or anything like that, but he actually sings well enough to compliment Barbra Streisand. Their voices actually work. It's the duet you never would have believed would have worked. Barbara even said that herself. It's charming. It's magical. It's beautiful. I highly recommend you listening to it. It will change your opinion about Bob Dylan. What was this? Extreme Brands. A healthy voice lasts a lifetime. Not always, but I mean, I agree with you there. A healthy voice, a singer who knows to take care of their voice, someone who has, worked with a vocal coach. They know proper breath control. They know how to preserve their larynx. They do last a long time, but I have heard older singers where they have gone into decline. Ethel Merman is an example of that. And you listen to her in her final years. There was definitely some vocal decline. Julie Andrews, of course, there was we know about the tragedy of the vocal cord surgery. And that was when she was doing Victor Victoria on Broadway, 8 performances a week. And vocally, it's an extremely demanding score where you've got to sing very low, when you're playing the male Victor, and then she'd have to sing in the high soprano for Victoria. And doing that 8 shows a week created nodules on her vocal cords, and she was recommended to go to this very highly regarded specialist. And I don't know if he botched the surgery or it was just a case of the nodules were so bad that her voice couldn't be entirely saved, but it ruined her singing voice, her exquisite singing voice. And I remember this was around the early 2000s. Again, it was when I was working in Brentwood. Met a lot of great celebrities there. And in fact, Angela Lansbury, you just mentioned her. I met her twice. Lovely lady. Very tall. I was shocked how tall Angela Lansbury was. I'm 6'2", and she was just like a little bit shorter than me. And I when I'd see her on TV, I always thought she was like this dainty, petite little thing. No, she was a big, she had big shoulders. She was a big woman, kind of like Julia Child, but just so gracious and so sweet. But anyway, Blake Edwards, Julie Andrews' husband, came in once. And we just asked him, how's Julie doing? And he got tears in his eyes. He said, it's not good. It's not good. He said, that beautiful voice. She's trying so hard, but it's not coming back. And he had tears in his eyes when he talked about it. And I understand even Celine Dion went to Julie Andrews and said, look, this is my doctor. Maybe he can help you. I think Julie Andrews tried every option, and that beautiful voice never came back. But I've told this story before. And again, hey, my Hollywood Bowl theme today. I was at the Hollywood Bowl for a show that Julie Andrews was going to host. And that's how it was built. She was going to host the show as an evening of Broadway music. They said nothing about her singing. Well, she came out, big movie screen came down. They showed a clip, the opening of The Sound of Music, the hills are alive, all that, which twirl, we all know that. And Julie Andrews stood in front of the movie screen where this clip played. And then she said to the audience, well, unfortunately, I can't sing like that lady on the screen anymore, but I'm going to try tonight. And the audience went crazy. The audience was, I was saying like, oh my God, Julie Andrews is going to sing. She's going to sing. And what Julie Andrews did, she sang My Funny Valentine, which is written in a lower key. And I later heard Julie Andrews say in an interview, she still had her 6 lower notes. When she was singing as Victor and Victoria, the lower range, she still has that. And My Funny Valentine was in a low key where she could perform it. It was just beautiful. I mean, everybody was crying. The great Julie Andrews was singing for us. But Extreme Brands, you were saying a healthy voice lasts a lifetime. I've heard people like Patti LaBelle. I think she's close to 80. She's still singing quite well. I'm trying to think of some other examples. But I think it's what's really sad is the singers who did not take care of their voices. And one of those people immediately comes to mind to me is Whitney Houston. I loved Whitney Houston. And we know the stories. She was just not taking care of herself. There was a period where she was heavily into drugs, alcohol. She was, I think, please pardon me if I've got my facts wrong here. I don't mean disrespect to Miss Houston, but I think she was even smoking crack at one time. I think they found pipes in her bathroom and stuff. Anyway, she was doing a lot of things that were not good for her vocal cords. Let's put it that way. And I saw a clip of her about 2 years before she died. She was performing in Europe, and she could just barely sing anymore. She could barely get through the show. It was painful to watch, to see this great artist in that state. My heart broke for her. And I'm also thinking of Liza Minnelli. And again, I love Liza, but I went to see her in concert a number of years ago at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood. And she was having a bad night vocally, really bad. Her voice was hoarse. It was cracking. She probably had no business being out there singing simply because she needed to do vocal rest, if nothing else. But, her big song, New York, New York. And she has that great big note. I'm not going to try to sing it, but in old New York, it's really big. And her voice belts. At least it used to when she would sing that. When she was trying to sing it for us, she could not hit that note to save her life. And you could see she was so embarrassed. She was so frustrated on stage. And I could see she felt bad. She felt bad for the audience. People paid to see her, and she wasn't delivering what they came to pay her to see. And she stopped the song and she said, okay, I'm going to try it again. And she tried she couldn't do it. And then she tried a third time and still couldn't hit the note. And the audience, but she had the love of the audience, and the audience was like cheering her, applauding her. And she just said, I'm sorry, I can't do it tonight. And so she went on with the show, but the audience forgave her. But I just remembered that. That's another example of someone who I guess had not cared for her voice, or whatever circumstances were there. Maybe it was some of the personal illnesses she had gone through. But anyway, what are some other comments here? Yeah, boy, I wish Joyce was on, but yeah, she had another commitment tonight. But Joyce is such a sweet lady. She sent me a text to let me know she wouldn't be here tonight. And of course, Anastasia's show also, which comes on 7 p.m. Pacific. Let me give Anastasia her plug here. That's how you can find her. For anyone who doesn't know yet, her channel is The Sacred Spears, and she is doing a live stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She will be on at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. So I just wanted to mention Anastasia, and several of you here have gone over to check out her show. And I just want to thank you on her behalf. It means the world to her, because she's trying to launch her brand, her channel, and it helps her so much when wonderful people like yourself are on there. So she has people to talk to and play off of, much like I do on this show. Let's see, where's some other comments here. Oh yeah, you mentioned What's Up, Doc. That is such a funny movie. And I love the opening credits when she sings You're the Top. So marvelous. And it was not released on any of her albums until she did a compilation called Just for the Record in 1991. They put it on there. I was so happy to have it there. And she and Ryan O'Neal worked beautifully together. They did that movie, and also another one called The Main Event a few years later. I think they had a love affair in real life. And of course, What's Up, Doc? One of the reasons Ryan O'Neal was attached to the film was because Peter Bogdanovich directed it. And Peter Bogdanovich had, I can't remember if he did it before or after, but anyway, they did Paper Moon together, with Ryan's daughter, Tatum, who won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar at the age of 10. And I saw something recently, to this very day, she is the youngest person ever to win a competitive Oscar. I met Tatum a couple of times. Very sweet lady. I just adored her. Just lovely in person. Let's see, where's some other comments here. Yes, Ryan O'Neal was likable in that film. I understand he could be quite, and I'm putting it politely when I say he could be quite the jerk in real life. Very problematic. I had a friend who worked as his personal assistant after Farah had passed away. And she said he was a very sad, broken man after Farah died. And my friend, very, very beautiful woman, beautiful statuesque blonde, not unlike Farrah Fawcett. She was an actress at the time. She's moved back to New York. I don't know if she's still acting anymore. But anyway, Ryan gave her some of Farrah Fawcett's clothes. He gave her some of her gowns because they were the same size. Let's see what else here. What are some other comments here? Andy, I know I asked this before or mentioned it before, but was Stan Laurel the only person who has his number in the phone book? Mae West was listed in the phone directory. Mae West. And I know someone who actually phoned her once. And he said she was delightful on the phone. Very, very sweet. She loved her fans. And everyone I've talked to who knew her in any capacity or encountered her said she was just golden with her fans. Treated everyone very well, and she was delighted when anybody called her on the phone. So yes. Now, I don't know about Larry Fine having his phone number listed. I know it was pretty rare. Pretty rare. And I got to tell you, when I was a kid, if I had known Mae West, her phone number was available to the public, I probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble with my mother and father, because that was back in the days where you paid for your long distance. And I mean, paid for it. It was very expensive. And I probably would have run up an outrageous phone bill calling Mae West and having to explain it to my parents. But in hindsight, it would have been worth it. Let's see here. Oh yeah, you were warned. You were making comment about meticulous. Barbara is about sound, because she does suffer from tinnitus. She's had that all of her life, but she said she's just hyper sensitive to pitch, to sound, to music, and she often does hear things that other people don't hear. Where she's had arguments with sound engineers who insisted she was making it up, she was hearing things, and then they go back and check the recording, and sure enough, she was right. Well, a lot of great performers know the technical aspects of their craft very well. Lucille Ball was like that. Lucille Ball knew every aspect of filmmaking, the cameras, the lighting, what the electricians did, the sound people. She was on top of everything. But she was very much the boss of I Love Lucy, and she knew every little detail. And there was a story once. She said, "There's a light overhead. It's out. Fix it." And the technician, or whoever it was, the electrician or whatever, said, "No, Lucy, the lights are fine." She said, "No, check the light. There's a light that's out above." And he had to climb way up in the catwalks and everything, like way to the top of the soundstage. And sure enough, there was a bulb out. And he went down later and said, "How did you know?" And she said, "I could feel a cool spot on my cheek. And I knew." And so most of these people, like Lucille Ball, Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, Barbara Streisand, they know you have to look out for yourself. You can't always trust people to take care of you. You got to be prepared to take care of yourself. And I think that's the way Barbara has felt about a lot of the technical aspects, like when she's recording. And let me scroll back here. Oh, hey, Chris, thanks for joining. Good to have you here. And let me go back a little here. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting point you make, Extreme Brands, about your husband being an opera conductor. And yes, Ethel Merman was a lifelong belter. That's an interesting terminology for it, stripping their gears. Yeah. I know Frank Sinatra was very critical of singers who would do that sort of thing, because Frank was meticulously trained. He was very proud of the fact he was meticulously well trained, and he knew how to take care of his voice. And sometimes he would go to singers, well-known singers, and say, "You are destroying your voice. Do you realize what you're doing to yourself?" And I've always wondered, because I'm lightly acquainted with one of his granddaughters. I hope that's okay to say publicly. I try to protect her privacy, and I've never asked her personal questions, but she is a marvelous singer. I'm going to say that. I've heard her sing. And if I could ask her any personal question, I'd love to say, "Did your grandfather give you vocal lessons?" Can you imagine having Frank Sinatra giving you voice lessons? But I'm sure he would have done that for his granddaughters. They were very close to him. There were some other comments here. Well, the interesting thing, Andy, you were making comment about singing voice lessons. Barbra Streisand has always insisted that she never took voice lessons. She did tell a story in an interview once. She was pressed. She said, okay, one time I went to a vocal teacher, and Barbra had this song that she sang on her very first album called A Sleeping Bee. It was a Diane Carroll song. And Barbra, I think, was 19, 20, maybe 21. She was very early in her career. And she was told, well, you must take voice lessons. So she thought, well, okay, I'll try one. And she went to this voice teacher she brought the sheet music for A Sleeping Bee, and she started singing. And the vocal teacher said, stop. You should pronounce it A Sleeping Bee. It's a bee. And Barbra was even saying that way. The teacher wanted me to go, A Sleeping Bee. And Barbra said, no, I don't think I need voice lessons. And she didn't. And she never took voice lessons. In her autobiography, she did tell one instance when she was recording the Broadway album. And it was a song from The King and I. And it ends with a high E. And Barbra said her range only went up to a high D. And it was that upper note. And she very much wanted to sing that song. And she couldn't hit it. So she called in a top vocal coach. And Barbra was just playing around the piano before the teacher arrived. And through sheer will, she hit the high E. And the vocal coach arrived and she said, I don't need you. I'll pay you for your time, but I don't need you. You can go on your way. I've got what I needed. And she hit the high E on the Broadway album. And her son, Jason, he was asked that question. The interviewer was saying, did your mother give you vocal lessons? He said, no, my mother wouldn't know how to give vocal lessons. She never had them herself. So she's just one of those innately gifted people. And here she is at 83, still singing beautifully. And Barbra even said in an interview, it's a podcast interview for the New Yorker, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear it, it's a good half-hour audio interview. She was talking about how she does not even do warm-ups. She doesn't vocalize. She doesn't do warm-ups. And she said, frankly, I'm too lazy. I just go in and sing. And she said she never, ever sings at home. That was one of the reasons Jim Brolin wanted to come to the recording sessions, because he never got to hear her at home. She said, I just don't sing. And she said, I had not sung in, I think she said, in years. And she went to the first recording session. She said, I honestly had no idea if anything was going to come out of my mouth or not when I started singing. And she said, I was as surprised as anyone when I could still hit my notes, so that's Streisand, but she's definitely a rarity. What do we have else here? Jim, you gave Anastasia a heart. Thank you. She'll appreciate that. I don't know if she's here watching or she's just preparing for her own show right now. Extreme Brands, my daughter is a singer and started as a belter. Now she sings with better breath support and technique, mainly to avoid the nodes and damaging her vocal cords. Well, that's wonderful, and I'm sure you're very proud of your daughter, and you're glad to see her taking care of her gift. I've often thought that of any of us who are artists, writers, actors, performers, we've been entrusted with something. A talent is a gift, truly a gift. It's been entrusted with us, and we have a sacred responsibility to take care of that gift and to use it to the best of our capabilities. That's just my own feeling there. Let's see here. Sabrina, hi, thanks for joining. The Andrews sisters. Oh my gosh, the Andrews sisters are your cousins? Oh my. I wonder if you have some stories you'd like to tell. I've heard a few about the Andrews sisters, but then I don't know what's truth and what isn't. But they were among the best singers of the 20th century, or at least they were among the most popular. They were, I certainly don't have to tell you this, but I'll mention to the viewers, they were just iconic. among the very biggest performers during the 1940s in particular. And I know they performed well into the 50s and 1960s, and of course until I believe it was Laverne who passed away first in 1967, and then Patty and Maxine performed together. But I understand, and Sabrina, I don't know if you would have anything to add to this, but I understand they had something of a falling out. I don't know the whole story. It's not my right to talk about it, but yes, they were marvelous. My mother was a big fan of the Andrews Sisters, so I heard a lot of Andrews Sisters songs growing up, a lot of big band music, Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, the Andrews Sisters, and I came to love it very much for myself. So Sabrina, I love your cousins. I'm fans. I'm a fan of the Andrews Sisters. So thank you for telling me that. Let's see here. I just remember. Oh, Andy, you have news about your mother in the nursing home. Oh, yeah. I don't know if I'm reading through the comments here, so maybe you mentioned later, but by all means, please tell us. I hope you have some good news about her. Oh, Ward, yes, I would have been just like Mr. Ed phoning Mae West. That's a classic episode. What happened to my scroll here? I hit something here and it went off the screen here. Let me see if I can find my place again. Okay, there we go. And I went to see her and I was there, and the doctor came in. He said to Mom she was showing a lot of progress. I'm very happy for you. That's good news. Very good news. And yeah, I wish celebs had their numbers in the phone book again. I think a lot of in this era, unfortunately, with a lot of stalkers and a lot of crazy people, I think they'd be afraid to do that. I'm thinking back to that story of that young actress, Rebecca Schaefer. This was back in the 80s. There was a show Pam Dauber did, she played Mindy on Mork and Mindy, called My Sister Sam. And Rebecca Schaefer played her younger sister, beautiful young woman. And some crazy fan went to the DMV. I don't know if you can do this now, but at the time you could go to the DMV and get someone's address. He got her address, showed her up at her door with a gun, and killed her on the spot. So I think a lot of people have to be very careful with their safety now. I don't even know if people like Mae West or Stan Laurel would list their numbers now in this modern era. In fact, phone books are just archaic now anyway. There's no reason for them anymore. I know for a long time they were being printed well past their shelf life. Just one time in front of my apartment building here, there were just stacks and stacks of phone books that had been left here for people to take, and nobody wanted them, and they were just sitting out in the rain, getting soaked and getting ruined. And I think some people would take phone books and use them for their fireplaces and things, for kindling and stuff, because few people have use for them anymore. There's this thing called our iPhone now. We can just look up a number. Yes, and it would have been fun to have called Stan Laurel. I heard he was just a beautiful man. Many people would call him, and there were people. He lived on the ocean front in an apartment building in Santa Monica, and he would sometimes say, come over and visit me. Let's just chat. And he just became like a god to people like Jerry Lewis and Dick Van Dyke and other comedians of the day who would come to his home wanting advice, and deferring to him. Dick Van Dyke was one of those people. Dick Van Dyke adored him. And he called up Stan Laurel. And Stan Laurel was a fan of the Dick Van Dyke Show and said, called him Dickie. Dickie, come over and visit me. And Dick Van Dyke became a close friend. So close that The Dick Van Dyke Show used to be on Wednesday nights from 9 to 9:30 p.m. The phone would always ring precisely at 9:30 or 9:29 as the closing credits were playing, and it would be Stan Laurel with a critique of the show. Now, this is what you could have done better. This is what worked well. And this is how I would suggest you doing this. And Dick Van Dyke just said it was golden to get that kind of advice. Dick Van Dyke had a hat, one of Stan Laurel's hats that was given to him. And Dick Van Dyke also gave the eulogy at Stan Laurel's funeral. And there was a wonderful TV special on CBS that was done as an hour-long tribute to Stan Laurel that Dick Van Dyke hosted. And I talked about this a week or two ago about how Lucille Ball and Buster Keaton, I think the only time they ever performed together, even though they were close friends, and Buster Keaton was Lucy's great mentor and teacher, it was the only time they actually performed together. It was on that special, and they did a whole 5-minute silent routine. And it's just, incredible to see two giants, two comedic icons working together like that. Let's see what else we have here. What was this? Wasn't somebody from the Marx Brothers movie did opera later in life? Yes, that was, might have been Kitty Carlisle, or was it Alan Jones who did opera? I forget, but Kitty Carlisle, I know, did sing opera. And, oh yes, Ward just said, I believe you're referring to Kitty Carlisle. If I scroll down my comments here, and I once saw Kitty Carlisle at the age of 94. And this is, boy, isn't this perfect? We're talking about singers taking care of their voices well into old age. Kitty Carlisle is a good example. It was a cabaret show here in Los Angeles. All she had was a pianist, and Kitty Carlisle came out on stage. Her son took her arm and escorted her out on stage. And Kitty at 94 looked sensational. She was wearing a gorgeous gown. And this gown was slid far up the side, showing off her legs. And she had beautiful high heels on, and her legs were beautiful. And especially in that gown, it was very daring for a woman of her age. And Kitty, ever so demurely, kicked her leg out and said, "They're the last thing to go." And she sang for us. It was a short show. It was only 45 minutes, but she sang beautifully. And I was just thrilled to be there, because as a kid, I used to watch her on To Tell the Truth 5 days a week. So people like that have a way of feeling like family when I know it's a cliche, but they come into our homes on the television set. And she knew that. And I also had a friend who visited Kitty Carlisle at her home in New York. And she was, I think, close. She died at 96. It was near the end of her life. And he came to her home. I forget what the reason was, if it was business or something. And he said she had all this wonderful memorabilia framed on her walls, and all these incredible pictures, all the celebrities she had known. And of course, the Marx Brothers and people like Alexander Woollcott and Helen Hayes and Ethel Merman, all just the cream of Broadway and Hollywood. It was in her home. And he said she was so sweet. Just a dear, dear lady. Let's see, get through the comments here. I see it's 6:43. I'm going to have to get off here soon, because I've got to have my dinner and also watch Anastasia's show. But let me see, what else do I have here? Or what do you think is worse, opera voice or, I'm not sure what you mean, what those letters mean about the voice, but opera singers tend to be extremely well trained to take care of their voices. And I know last year I saw Taranto, the Puccini opera, at the Dorothy Chandler, downtown LA. And I think I read that they purposely did only 2 performances a week, because the score was so demanding. So they had to do only 2 shows a week for the sake of the opera singers and their voices, to preserve their voices. But I'm also thinking of Maria Callas. She went through a lot of decline toward the end of her life, and I forget what all the circumstances were. Um, Marvelous Maria Callas. I adore her. And you know something interesting about Maria Callas? I saw an interview with her. She was asked who her favorite singer was. And I was surprised. She said Judy Garland. She said Judy Garland has the most perfect voice I've ever heard in my life. That was coming from Maria Callas. Quite a compliment. And also, Maria Callas was a big I Love Lucy fan. When she was teaching her master class in New York in the late 60s, she had a very strict rule to finish her class. I think it was by 3:30 in the afternoon. Very strict rule because she wanted to get home in time to watch I Love Lucy. Little fact there. Let me speed through the comments here. Please forgive me if I missed some of your comments here. We might have saved some things for next week. Some things I've already covered. And let's see here. See, I'm seeing some things I already mentioned. Yeah, they did catch the person who killed Rebecca Schaefer. That was a tragedy, but I think, yeah, there were some laws enacted to prevent that sort of thing. Like now, I don't think a person can go to the DMV and just get a celebrity's address like that. And I of course, now there's the internet and you can probably find it that way. I don't know. But I know some measures were taken to prevent that tragedy from happening again, or at least to deter it. Let's see. I never since I've heard three people singing together so perfectly. You heard one voice and sort of three separate voices. I don't know if you're mentioning. Are you thinking? Oh, Sabrina, I missed the comment. Who you were referring to? Maybe you were referring to. I know that Streisand and Ariana Grande and Mariah Carey sang beautifully together on Streisand's new album. And you know, forgive me, I don't know which three singers you're referring to, but getting back to Julie Andrews at the Hollywood Bowl, the second time I saw her, she sang again. And this is the most eclectic trio I have ever seen in my life. Julie Andrews, Chaka Khan, and Reba McEntire. Now, is that not an eclectic singing trio? And they performed quite well together. Let's see, what else do we have here? Sabrina, speaking of voices that go beautifully together, I saw Brian Stokes Mitchell in concert about 2 months ago. The great Broadway actor. He's a Tony winner. Beautiful. One of the most beautiful baritone voices you'll ever hear in your life. And he did a Broadway show with Ragtime and Audra McDonald was with him. And there's a song called On the Wheels of a Dream. And I don't think I've ever heard a more perfect pairing of a male and female voice, where you've got two people on the same level of talent. Oh, it's just gorgeous, gorgeous. Yeah, look for the clip, or you can even find it on iTunes. You've got to listen to it if you haven't. Or it's been fun, but I got to go. I need to go soon too. So that's why I'm speeding through these comments here. Let's see. Yes, Turando is amazing. This was a beautiful production. I understand that it was $1 million production. You know, the money that went into the sets, the costumes, the full orchestra, the cast, and you really saw it up on stage. And acoustically, it was mesmerizing. No, Sabrina, I didn't know that about Elvis Presley having a pitch perfect voice. I know he had a beautiful voice. Sometimes I felt with Elvis, because of Colonel Parker, he never really got to show his fullest potential as an entertainer. I think well, for one thing, as an actor, it was Shelley Winters who wrote in one of her books. She was in an acting class with him. Trying to remember. It was the great method acting teacher. Why am I blanking? And I know this so well. But anyway, she was in the acting class and Elvis was there. He was auditing the class or something, and he did a scene, and Shelley Winters said he was extraordinary. She said, the world will never know what a great, great actor Elvis Presley was. He never got to show that because he got put on all these schlocky movies that made money. Colonel Parker was about him making monies and giving the public what he thought they wanted. And of course, getting back to Streisand, he was the original choice, her original choice to play Norman, the Norman Maine character in A Star Is Born, the role that went to Chris Christopherson. She very much wanted Elvis, and Elvis very much wanted to do it, and Colonel Parker botched the deal. And basically felt that it wasn't what the fans wanted to see him in. And I personally think it would have revitalized his whole career. Elvis might have even lived a few more years because it might have given him incentive to diet and get himself back in shape. And it would have given him new purpose and probably given him a whole new career in movies. We don't know. That's just speculation. Let's see what other comments here. Oh, Sabrina, thank you. The Andrews sisters sounded like one voice. Thank you for clarifying that. I do apologize. It's hard for me with this whole list of comments sometimes to go back and find, but yes, I agree with you. The Andrews sisters had incredible harmony, and yes, they did sound like one voice. There were some moments I've seen where, Patty, they would let her shine a little and let her stand out a bit more, but they were beautiful together. What else do we have here? Was Elvis Presley's acting teacher Howard Fine? I didn't know that. Now, I am familiar with Howard Fine. I actually knew some people a long time ago who studied with him. And yes, performers like Kim Hunter, Marilyn Monroe, Julie Harris, Paul Newman, Geraldine Page. Actually, I think, aren't you thinking of Lee Strasberg? That was the name I couldn't think of. And Lee Strasberg was the big method acting teacher. And I know for a fact that people like Kim Hunter, Marilyn Monroe, Julie Harris, Geraldine Page, Paul Newman, Brando, they all worked with him. So I don't know. Maybe they worked with Howard Fine also, but I know they worked with Strasberg. And that's whose class it was. It was Lee Strasberg's class that Shelley Winters saw Elvis Presley do a scene. And Sabrina, Elvis hated those movies. They were like a straitjacket, like a cage he was in. And I think had he done that dramatic role with Barbra Streisand, it really, really would have turned his life and career around. See, Streisand in the remake, she wanted to play the star on the decline and have Elvis be the star who was rising. And of course, when she ended up with Chris Christopherson, she went back to the original formula. I think we reached the end of the comments here. Sabrina, thank you for joining. Thank you for your comments, your insight. Thank you, everyone, for your lovely, lovely comments. I love doing this show. I love learning from everyone. I love when we can talk about these things. As I go, oh my God, 6:53 here. So I just want to give one more plug for my dear friend Anastasia Pavlov. She's going to be doing her show on the Sacred Spears in just a few minutes. She's been on this show a few times. I already guested on her show, but I know she just loves it when you cross over from this show to her show, and she can enjoy you as I enjoy you. And let's see. What was this? Chuck, I asked before you talked Burns and Allen. Did you ever get a chance to see him? No, regretfully, I didn't. I would have loved to have met George Burns, but I was never that fortunate. And of course, Gracie died way back in 1964. But anyway, I thank you all for being here. And of course, tomorrow I will be with the wonderful Dr. Whimsy Anderson on her show, Taco Tuesdays, on the channel The Oracle of Whimsy. And that's a very different show because that's where we do more serious news stories, things that are going on. And there's certainly not a loss of things to talk about right now. So that's where I will be tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, um, uh, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to have to sign up because it is now 6:55, and I don't want to take away from my friend's show. And and thank you, Andy, for the happy 4th of July. I wish you all a happy 4th of July, and I hope you do some fun things and have fireworks and festivities or whatever you like to do on the 4th, or just resting is good to do with a holiday. So anyway, I'm going to say goodbye now, for now, and I'll be back next week at the same time and same place. Thank you so very much. And where did my cat go? I was going to hold her up for a second. Okay, so goodbye for now. Thank you.